Hi everyone and welcome to Valley View Living. My name is Megan, I have 6 kids and live out on 10 acres in country New South Wales, Australia. Here on my channel I like to share slow living, a country life, a little bit about homeschooling now and then, our homesteading journey, and I share a lot of cooking from scratch. I love and am learning about all things nutrient dense and healing, bone broth, sauerkraut, ferments, milk straight from our dairy cow, baking with alternative grains, meat and veg kind of living. If any of this interests you, please feel free to subscribe, and that way you can keep up with my next video. I started today with no real meal plan, but I did have several cuts of meat defrosted or defrosting in the fridge, and one of those cuts was stewing steak. This is from our own home-raised beef steer. And I knew I wanted to make something stewy, something soupy, something warming and hearty for the cold winter days we're having right now. And I knew that if I wanted that to really be delicious, I would need a broth. So first thing in the morning, while the kitchen was busy making the breakfasts, I went ahead and roasted some chicken wings that I've had hanging around in the freezer for a while. Put them on to roast with the plan to be to pop them in my stock pot with some veggies, just a carrot, an onion, that kind of thing, some herbs from the garden, and pop that on to simmer so that by the time I was ready to assemble this beef and bean stew, I would have some hot simmering broth ready to go. I used a few bay leaves from the garden. We have a bay tree, and I try to use that as much as possible. I do love the flavour of bay. Makes me think of winter and slow cooking and all those good things. Some rosemary that had been in the kitchen for a while, so it was dried at this point, and some thyme. We have so much thyme right now. This must be the season for thyme to thrive in the garden here, because if you go out to the veggie patch right now and the sun is out around midday and it's had a couple of hours in the sun, you can just smell that thyme. It just fills the air all around the garden, and I love it. It's a beautiful herb. So after the farm chores were done on this weekend morning, we decided to go ahead and make some of these delicious grain-free chocolate cookies. Now, this is a recipe that I have played around a little bit with so that I could substitute almond meal instead of wheat flour. And I know that way that we're just getting a bit of a higher protein, higher good fat, and really more nutritious than a standard cookie. But I also don't want to compromise on the texture and the flavor. I want it to taste just as good as the real thing. And this does. I'm going to share this recipe with you in the description box below. And I encourage you, if you want to go ahead and try that one, if you're wanting a gluten-free treat These are just so yummy. They don't last long around here. I think of this batch, most of it was eaten in the morning after they were ready, and then we had just enough left over for one more cookie. I keep thinking biscuit and then I keep saying cookie. I'm between both terms, okay? I love biscuit, that's classic Australian dialect, of course, and then cookie has just snuck in via my kids. It's really such a cute word that I know Australians are adopting it with affection. So I'm happy to use either way. But yes, these chocolate biscuits are very tasty and I encourage you to give them a go. So we're nearing the winter solstice here. That will be coming up in the next week. I believe it's next weekend actually. My kids have asked if we can have a backyard fire, and they have asked for the rare treat of toasting marshmallows. And I think they want to try and make some of the s'mores. That's not really an Australian custom, but definitely something that has crept in that they have seen on TV shows and things like that. And I have to say it does sound delicious. I think it's biscuits, like maybe in Australia we can use an arrowroot biscuit. It seems to be just a bit of a plain biscuit. And then they're going to put the melted marshmallow off the fire in between those biscuits with a square of chocolate. And I don't know if you're meant to then cook it on a fire or how that works, what the tradition is, but I know that they are simply going to devour that and enjoy it. So that's what we're going to do to commemorate the winter solstice. Of course, that's being the shortest day of the year. And then after that point, well, amazingly, things will already start to grow again. We'll start to get slightly more sun every day, even though it will still be very cold for a couple of months yet, at least. The days will get slightly longer and the grass will start to grow just a little bit more in the paddocks, and the veggie patch will sort of still be wintering, of course, but we'll have a little more time and a little more sunshine. Things like the garlic should start popping up out of the soil. And yeah, the hardy herbs are doing really well out there. As a mum to young children, I actually really enjoy winter. I enjoy summer and the longer days for different reasons, but definitely winter has the charm in that the kids tend to sleep easier and longer. So they go to bed earlier, it's warm and cozy in the house and it's dark early and it's just easier to get them off to sleep. And then they're happy to stay in bed warm and snug for later in the morning. So I truly find it a season of more rest.
Mum, it seems to only be in the States.
The kids were all excited to make a homemade lemonade, and this is a regular whenever we can get some good quality citrus. It's so simple, but honestly, it really is totally delicious. It's great as an immunity booster and just as a preventative for good health, but also wonderful when somebody is sick or sniffly or allergies or flu or cold. We now know that honey is just as effective as a cough medicine as anything you can buy at the chemist. So this is a very worthy treatment. Now it's wonderful to find a local honey and just keep that in stock in your pantry for times that you have access to this citrus and you just need something yummy. Of course, it's just delicious as a refreshing drink as well. A lovely way to enjoy this in summer is with some frozen raspberries and topped off with soda water or a fizzy, sparkling mineral water, something like that. So we just take a tall glass jug. This one I think is 2 litres. And we juiced the juice of about 3 or 4 of these lemons. They were really fresh and really juicy. And then we added in about half a jar of honey. I'm going to say that's 4 good tablespoons in there. Now we pour a little boiling water on top of that just to loosen up the honey, get it all mixed together nicely. And then I top the jug up to the top with spring water. Now you can put ice in that. As I mentioned earlier, you can go with frozen fruit like frozen raspberries. Really lovely. It's a great thing to add supplements to if you want to get them into your kids, things like a magnesium or maybe a vitamin C powder, but you don't need it either. In itself, it's just a lovely healing drink. If it tastes a little too strong, you can always water it down easily. Use it like you would a cordial. Use a portion of the lemonade and then just top it up with water until your taste. I find that kids like it quite sweet, but also they're pretty tolerant of the tanginess of the citrus in this setting. These chocolate cookies are best left to rest until they have set in their shape, so I wouldn't try to eat these for maybe 15 minutes or so, maybe even a little longer. They really are delicious at that point. They go crisp on the outside and the inside is more like a fudgy, brownish, cakey texture. Super tasty. My son here is just taking a plate of these up to Grandma's house, which is a couple of hundred meters walk away, or maybe 100 meters walk. I'm not that great with judging distance. It's not very far. It's in the back 5 acres of our property, and he's going to take a plate of these cookies up to share with the other kids and with Grandma. And I'm going to get started in a slightly quieter house. I've still got a couple of kids here with me while the rest are all playing outside, feeding Grandma's horses and having biscuits for morning tea. I'm going to get going on this beef and bean stew. So I didn't follow a particular recipe here. I just sort of went with flavours that I knew go together and something that would just be hot and tasty and hearty. So I'm going to slice up some capsicum that we have in the fridge. We get that quite regularly at the moment in our organic fruit and veg delivery. And it is really tasty. It's nice even raw, just when sliced. It's quite sweet. And some onion. I'm just going to slice it up and saute that onion down. At the moment I'm completely out of olive oil, so I'm just using a bit of butter to cook that in. And then I'll add some garlic to the soft onion. And I've got to brown off the beef in batches just to get a nice flavour on the outside. And then we'll assemble our stew. So I do have exciting news to share about our journey with dairy on our own property. So we have one cow in milk at the moment. She has had a calf arrive at foot with her when we purchased her. And that calf must be about 6 months old now. So she's got that calf at foot and she's in milk. We have just figured out a system with our current infrastructure here, our current fencing, to separate her calf from her during the day. And, you know, he's big enough now that they're quite happily separate during the day. She's not bellowing about it all the time, and he's not upset about it either. He just goes off with his calf friend. So the calf's name is Jacob, and he is a bull calf. We have not actually had him castrated, which is a bit of a head scratcher and a bit of a worry, but we're just going to go with this and see how we go. He is set for the table later on when he's a little bit bigger. And we also have his little friend Chamomile, who's a beautiful little Jersey cross who showed up on our property one day and let's say ingratiated herself into our mob of cows and into us as well. We just love her now. She's darling, sweet. She's very timid and she will need a bit of work to get us used to her. But anyway, she arrived on our property one day and several months later we finally located the owner. And that's not to say we weren't looking. We spent that time looking and talking to the neighbours and trying to work out where she came from. We eventually found her owner and we happily negotiated to purchase her. So she's now part of our mob here and she will just be another cow to add to the herd that we can milk and who can have a calf for us when she's old enough. Now, all that to say, yes, Jacob and Chamomile keep each other company in a separate paddock with Granny's horses. During the day, while our milking cow Hazel builds up a store of milk for us, and then at the end of the day, for the last couple of days, we've managed to get Hazel into our little makeshift handmade milking stall, and we just hand milk her. Now, she is a Jersey cross shorthorn cow, which means she is a dairy breed crossed with a meat breed, and she's never going to give the kind of high yields that common dairy breeds like Friesian or Jersey do. But that is just fine. If we could get something like 2 litres a day, that would probably be plenty for us just to drink. And if we can move up from there, maybe when we have more than one cow to milk at a time, we can look at things like cheese and cream and butter and all those other wonderful ways to use milk when you have a surplus. So I was pleasantly surprised by how much my kids enjoyed this beef and beans stew. I had one child who decided to just have chicken broth with some buttered sourdough toast instead, but all 5 of my other children really enjoyed it, which is wonderful. So thanks for joining me today as I go about my homemaking and homesteading tasks. If you've enjoyed my content, please feel free to like, comment or subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!